Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today we're going to be analyzing polling data from Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, essentially most parts of the contested Rust Belt, and look at the polling data that pretty much favors the Democrats when it comes down to every single question taken by the pollsters. So this pollster was NBC News. I'm pretty sure you all know who that is. But if we're looking at what we see on the generic ballot poll, keep in mind that the Democrats currently have a 7.5% lead over the Republicans. Keep that in mind. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to go look over at our Wisconsin questionnaire by NBC News/Marist poll. And the margin of error right now is 3.8% plus or minus. So again, we're looking at that. Something to note when we're looking at these polling data numbers. And we're looking at the approval rating of the president in the state of Wisconsin. Right now, it says he is disapproved by, 18% more disapprove than approve. And if we look at the Morning Consult and their tracking numbers, I guess they call it tracking Trump now, but they do statewide opinion polls for every single state about how they approve of the president. Right now, he's a negative net 13% approval rating. So keep that in mind. So even if this is overestimating the potential amount of people that disapprove of the president by 5%, we're going to keep that in mind when we're looking at this data. So again, we're looking at the approval rating of the president. So clearly this crowd is not so keen on the president. Right now they have a 35% approval rating for the president. So we're going to completely, we're not going to focus on things like this or the primaries because that's not what's truly important. What's truly important is when it comes down to the congressional elections and when it comes down to the Senate elections, and there is a governor election going on in the state of Wisconsin, but that doesn't go for every single state, and neither does the Senate elections, but congressional races are extremely important. So again, more approval rating polls and talking about the Russian interference in the 2016 elections, things like that. But here's something to note. In the next election for president, do you feel that if Donald Trump runs, I guess I'm just rephrasing it, should he be reelected or should someone else take his place? And 63% of people from this polling data say that they should give a new person a chance. And also 63% of registered voters say that the state of Wisconsin should give someone else a new chance in the White House. So that does not mean that these people are necessarily Democrats, but a lot of them do not necessarily approve of what the president is doing. 35% of them do approve, yet somehow only 31% of registered voters and 29% of Wisconsin residents say that he deserves to be reelected. So they may approve of what he's doing, but they may also want someone new, whether it be a Republican or a Democrat. And giving a new person a chance means that Donald Trump would not be reelected. So keep that in mind also, because Wisconsin was crucial to Donald Trump's 2016 victory. He won it around 11 sometime p.m., according to Fox News, and around 2 something a.m., according to CNN. So keep that in mind as well. Wisconsin was one of those more hotly contested states, but it wasn't supposed to be. It was never supposed to be that close, and it was never supposed to be Republican, and it was. So again, this is one of those states that the Democrats really need to focus on if they want to win back in 2016. So I skipped past Senate elections. I did not mean to do that, but we also needed to focus on the point below. But now we're at the November U.S. Senate elections and the governor elections, and we'll do the same thing. They did the same thing that they did for Donald Trump. Do you feel that Scott Walker deserves to be reelected governor of Wisconsin, or do you feel that it is time to give a new person a chance? 61% of registered voters, keep that in mind, these are people that are probably going to come out and vote. 61% say give a new person a chance. So that means 61% of those people are not so keen on voting for him for re-election. And if we go up and look, when given the possibility between two candidates, Tony Evers and Scott Walker, of course the Democratic and Republican respectively, we have 54% of registered voters saying they would vote for a Democratic candidate, the Democratic candidate, and 41% saying they would vote for the Republican incumbent. Keep that in mind. Right now, Democrats are leading by 13% in the state of Wisconsin. It also goes to show that Trump negatively is approved 13% over his approval rating in the state of Wisconsin as well. So Donald Trump is definitely making a negative impact on Republican candidates here, but also these states are no longer the swing states when it comes down to these type of elections. The Senate election was not supposed to be contested, and it really isn't. Right now, Tammy Baldwin is probably in the likely or possibly even safe, depending on who you ask, for her re-election bid, whereas the governor election definitely is getting closer, but not in the way that the Republicans want it to be. The Democrats shouldn't be winning in this Wisconsin governor race because Scott Walker originally was rated as leaning or possibly even likely for the Wisconsin governor race, and now this race is either leaning or toss-up depending on who you ask, and this new data is not helping the Republicans one bit. And we're looking at the U.S. Senate elections here. Tammy Baldwin is leading by double digits. This is a state that Donald Trump won in 2016 by 22,000 votes. And right now, the Democratic incumbent, who would be the Democratic nominee, is leading by 15% over a Republican candidate. We look at the other Republican candidates, she's leading by 17%. Keep that in mind when we're looking at this data. The Democrats are doing phenomenal in the state of Wisconsin when they really shouldn't be, based off the 2016 election results and also the 2016 Senate election results. So 2016 might have been a blip, and it might have been different, and it might have been something that was crazy and really unheard of, and it was. But also, it may be a one-time in the Wisconsin state history, voting for a Republican after so long voting for the Democratic Party. So it's probably not going to stay in the column in 2020. So we flip Wisconsin to the Democratic column, but that still gives the Republicans the victory when it comes down to the presidential election. So if Wisconsin goes, it doesn't mean the Democrats are going to win. It's just something to say that if Wisconsin goes, other states will go as well. Another Trump state that he won by 11,000 votes back in 2016, the state of Michigan. The margin of error here is 3.9%, not much more than what we saw in the other polls. So the approval rating poll here is a little bit more skewed in the favor of the Democratic Party, but that's not to discredit the entire poll. They definitely do have an accurate indication, and you can't just throw out an entire poll just because you don't agree with the results of it. We have a disapprove 53% for the president, 35% approval rating. The Morning Consult, I trust not as much as NBC News, but I'm going to use this as my baseline because this came out before, and it's also been a little bit more consistent. Donald Trump currently has 8% of more voters disapproving of him than approving of him in the state of Michigan. And that's not what we're seeing here. It's an 18% margin in this NBC News poll. So let's say we take away 10% from what we're seeing. If we go down and we look at the congressional elections and the generic ballot that they did take here, but actually something that we should really focus on is the Senate election. So right now, Debbie Stabenow, the Democratic incumbent, the Democratic presumed nominee, 55% over John James, the Republican, 37%. That is a considerable lead, but even if you do take 10% away from Debbie Stabenow, saying that they underestimate Republicans by 10%, well, 45% of voters would still go to Debbie Stabenow, and 37% would still remain in the John James column because we're not going to add any voters to the Republican Party. Because again, not everyone who disapproves of the president is a Democrat, and not everyone who approves of him is a Republican. 37% of voters. Debbie Stabenow still wins the Senate election here. Against her other candidate, you take away 10%, 42% to 37%. She still wins the Senate election. So the Democrats are definitely at an advantage here, even if they are overestimating Democrats by 10%, which they probably aren't. It still goes to show that the Democrats do have a great possibility of winning here. Another election, this is the actual one where we're tanking 10% away, could make an important difference. Gretchen Whitmer currently leading her Republican opponent 47 to 38. Take away 10% away from her, she still only loses by 1%. Keep that in mind. And if we look at the congressional, I guess you could count this as a congressional generic ballot poll. I believe there was another section that said if you would vote for a Democrat or a Republican. Let me see if I can find it. It might have been only in the Wisconsin poll, but usually they ask similar questions. I might have missed it right here. If November's election for Congress was held today, which party, generic ballot poll, 49% say Democrats and 36% say the Republican Party. Sorry, my bad. Mixing up words here, but still, right now, it looks like the Democrats have a very big advantage when it comes down to the Rust Belt. And let's see if they did that poll where it says in 2020, do you think Trump, yeah, right here. Right now, 27% of residents say he deserves to be reelected, and 28% say he does deserve to be reelected according to registered voters. And 62% of registered voters say that you should give a new person a chance, and 64% of residents say you should give a new person a chance. So that's not looking too good for the Trump reelection bid. That, you can flip the state of Michigan over to the Democratic column. Still doesn't give them a clear victory, and that is the last state that went for Donald Trump that we're going to be analyzing today. But also, keep that in mind. If these states are flipping, states like Pennsylvania are probably going to flip. But right now, I can't call that. So still, Donald Trump wins re-election according to this opinion polling data. But if they had covered Pennsylvania, you could expect a similar result where the Democrats would win. And we're going to click off of those two polls, and then we're going to go over to the Minnesota questionnaire. The margin of error here is 4%. I think it went up 1% every single time we move to a new poll. But right now, 14% higher disapproval rating than approval rating. Actually, if we look at the Morning Consult poll, it is actually net 15%. All right, so negative 15%. So essentially, 15% of voters disapprove of the president more than they approve of him in the state of Minnesota, according to the Morning Consult. So typically, these new polls that we just looked at underestimate the president. This one, you could say, overestimates him, but we're not going to. We're going to give the president the benefit of the doubt, the Republican Party the benefit of the doubt, and we're not going to take votes away from the Republican side because, again, typically polling done by national news media sometimes skews in the favor of the Democrats, but not always. And it always gives an accurate indication, but it doesn't always mean that it's going to be very solid for either candidate. Right now, if we look at this, 48% of voters say they would vote for a Democrat, 37% say they would vote for a Republican. We're going to skip the primaries because, again, not really important. What's important is the general election. Right now, Tina Smith, not many people actually know who she is. She has a 33% approval rating, but around a 18-19% disapproval rating because of the fact that not many people know who she is. If November's election for United States Senate in Minnesota was held today, who would you support if the candidates are? And Tina Smith, Karen Housley, and undecided. And Tina Smith gets 49% of the vote. Only needs 1% more of undecided voters, 1.1% more of undecided voters to win the election. And she's probably going to win, starting off with an early lead of 14% over her Republican opponent. Now we have the governor election, one that many people are focusing on as a more contested race with a retiring Democratic incumbent. We have Tim Walz, who is a nominee running for the nomination. He, I believe, is leaving his seat open, which gives a possibility for a Republican victory, but also the Democrats are targeting it as well because they know it is possible for a Republican victory. He leads his Republican opponent, if this was his Republican opponent, which it likely will be, by 11%. Another Democrat leads the same Republican opponent by 11%, and also another Democratic opponent leads the same candidate by 8%. So clearly Tim Walz and Lori Swanson are right now the front runners and the people that most Democrats know and most people like in the state, but also there's no possibility, if these numbers are correct, for a Republican victory in the governor election. So overall, Minnesota just becomes more blue. Right now, looking at all these polling numbers, it does not look good for the Republicans in the Rust Belt at all. These states should be contested. These are states that Donald Trump won in back in 2016, and it was a huge referendum against the Democrats. But what good is a huge referendum if they flip back another 4 years after that election, or even in the Senate elections? These races, again, should be close. If Donald Trump won here, there's no reason why in 2018 and in midterm elections, which typically favor the Republican Party, why somehow the Democratic incumbent is leading by double digits, or in a governor election with a Republican incumbent who has the factor of the incumbency running for a third term, who previously was poised at winning re-election, is now losing by double digits. We go over to Minnesota, another contested race. This one is a toss-up race. The Democrats are leading by double digits. Okay, you go over to another state, the state of Michigan. This race also should be contested based off the 2016 election result. Donald Trump won here in 2016 by 11,000 votes, and 100 days away 11,000 votes, and 100 days away from the midterm elections, these should have already been close. There is very little time for the Republicans to narrow down these races, and it only seems like the Democrats are just expanding their lead. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.